payroll tax cut tonight. But let's turn to some very serious, broad-based, flat tax reform. In this case, Newt Gingrich's 15% flat tax. Not so different from Herman Cain's 999 or Rick Perry's 20%. Me? I think all these plans would be a huge improvement over the current system, which is a disaster. Here now to debate the proposition, CNBC contributor Howard Dean, a former Vermont governor, former DNC chair, and from the Senate side, Louisiana Republican David Vitter. Howard Dean, are you going to sign on to the Gingrich plan? It is so much better than the current system. It would create massive incentives, stop the double tax on investment. Are you going to sign on?
The only thing you forgot to mention is the $1.5 trillion shortfall in the federal budget as a result of this. I'd like to balance the budget. That's what I'm going to sign on to.
Yeah, but the way this thing was scored, Mr. Senator David Vitter, the course that the Brookings Institute, nice guys, but they are liberals, they don't believe in the incentive model, and they scored on a static, not a dynamic basis. Senator Vitter,
Larry,
what if Gingrich produces a 4 to 5% growth rate with this?
Yeah, the world isn't static, obviously, so I absolutely support some version of a very simplified tax system. Let's get rid of almost all of the special loopholes and deductions and credits, and let's use that to lower rates, starting with the corporate income tax rate, the second highest in the world. That will produce significant growth, major growth, and when you have growth, you have more revenue.
And Howard Dean, don't forget, Newt has a 12.5% corporate tax rate territorially around the world, so there's no double tax overseas. That would make America competitive after all these years.
I'm very interested in simplifying the tax code. I'm with Senator Vitter on simplifying the tax code, but I'm not for doing what went on in the Bush administration, which is to cut the living daylights out of taxes, and we never recovered from that deficit. We cannot go down this road again.
Well,
Simplify the tax code by all means, but let us not make the deficit worse by doing so.
And Larry, let me just be clear. We can do this. I'm not sure about how Newt's plan deals with this, but we can do this simplification in a revenue-neutral way in a static model. But of course, the world is not static, like we were saying. This will produce major growth, and with it, major new revenue.
I mean, it seems so simple to me, Governor Dean. But you lower the rates, you get rid of the deductions,
Larry,
you lower the rates, you get income should be taxed once and only once.
We tried this.
This is what George Bush did. Tax capital and investment 2, 3, and 4 times.
Larry, stop it. We know for a fact, because we tried this. The Bush tax cuts are now responsible for 60% of the deficit.
No, he didn't go far enough. This is a whole reform plan.
So
Bush
we created trillions of dollars worth of deficits, and then you want to do more of the same? This is insanity.
I agree that,
this is clinically diagnosable.
Larry, I agree that what we're talking about is completely different than the Bush tax cuts. The Bush tax cuts were lowering rates. I supported that. It did produce some very healthy economic years. But we're talking about much more fundamental reform, truly fundamental reform, getting rid of most of these loopholes and deductions and credits and lowering rates in a significant way. Again, you can do that in a revenue-neutral way in a static model and produce major growth, and with it, major additional revenue.
I mean, Governor Dean, the country hates the tax code. They want a simplification. They want it on a postcard.
I agree with that.
I mean, what's wrong? And what about Senator Vitter's contention? If you get rid of the deductions, and yes, let's cut spending. I don't really hear the Democrats trying to cut spending. Then you'd have yourself incentives and growth and limited government.
But we know for a fact that that approach has not worked. I believe we ought to balance the budget.
I don't know how we know it doesn't work, because we've never tried it. We've never tried cutting spending in a significant way.
But we've never
tried cutting spending in a significant way.
But when the Republicans were in charge,
they fundamental simplification I'm talking about.
Go ahead,
I think a lot of people have tried that, and it's failed. And the reason it's failed is because neither party has the guts to do what it really takes. The Republicans cut taxes without cutting spending, and the Democrats expanded spending without raising taxes. You can't do either one of those. You need to both raise taxes for those who can afford it, so they'll pay their fair share, and cut spending. And if you're willing to do that, I'm very willing to look at simplification of the tax code, because I think that would be a good thing.
Senator Vitter, I'll give you the last word. I just want to throw this out quickly.
Sure.
I would argue that at lower tax rates, the upper-end successful earners will actually pay more in taxes and more as a share of taxes.
Sure they will. Absolutely. That always happens in this direction of tax reform. Right now, the top 2% are paying almost 43% of the total federal income tax bill. But you're right, Larry, with this type of reform and simplification, that will only go up.
All right, one can only hope. Howard Dean, we will have to discuss this much more. Anyway, many thanks, Senator David Vitter of Louisiana.
Thank you.
Governor Howard Dean, thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
All right, all I can add to that is I am forever and now. I'm a Jack Kemp, Steve Forbes, Dick Armey, Art Laffer, flat tax guy, Steve Moore, and that's what we need.